You talk too much. That's what her grandson said when she simply asked, "What does this button do on the phone?" That one sentence, so short, so dismissive, lingered in her mind all week. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just stopped asking questions. And if you're over 60, there's a good chance you've experienced something like this. Have you ever asked a sincere question, only to be met with an eye roll, a sigh, or that blank, disinterested look from someone younger? It might have been about your smartphone, the TV remote, or a new term people are using online. You weren't trying to be difficult. You were just trying to understand, to keep up, to stay connected. But instead of encouragement, you got silence, or worse, sarcasm. And it hurts, doesn't it? Because at this stage in life, you don't want to be seen as a burden. You want to be seen as someone who's lived, learned, and still wants to grow. Yet in a world rushing forward, it can feel like the world has stopped making space for people like you. Technology evolves faster than ever. Culture shifts by the day. And often, what you get in return for your curiosity is dismissal, impatience, or a suggestion to Google it yourself. That's not just frustrating, it's deeply isolating. And even though they may not mean to hurt you, those quick responses from the younger generation send a message: you don't belong here. Now let me ask you, have you ever held back a question because of that fear? The fear of being seen as outdated, irrelevant, or simply too slow. If you've ever swallowed your curiosity to protect your dignity, you're not alone. I've spent over a decade working with older adults, and this silent struggle comes up time and again. People who once led teams, raised families, served their communities, now sitting quietly in the corner, afraid of being too much. But here's what I know to be true: curiosity is not a flaw. It's not a weakness. It's a sign that your mind is still alive, your spirit still engaged. And that deserves to be honored. In today's video, we're going to talk about something that almost no one addresses directly: the emotional weight of being misunderstood as we age, and the quiet strength of knowing when to stay silent. We'll explore 9 powerful things you should keep to yourself, not out of shame, but to protect your peace, your dignity, and your relationships. These are not secrets. They are boundaries born of wisdom. Some of them might surprise you. Some might hit close to home. But each one can help you live with greater self-respect and calm. But first, I want to hear from you. Have you ever said something that damaged a relationship? Something you instantly wished you could take back? If so, please take a moment to pause this video and comment just one word below: regret. That's it. You don't have to explain. Just regret. It might be the very thing that helps another person watching this feel less alone. And if you found this video meaningful so far, I'd be truly grateful if you'd take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support doesn't just help this video reach more people, it helps grow a community of wisdom, compassion, and healing. Now, let's begin. Because this isn't just about the words we say. It's about how we're remembered. It's about the impact we leave behind. And in a world that often moves too fast to listen, it's time we talked about the quiet power of listening, of restraint, and of letting our actions speak louder than words. In the next section, we'll begin with something deceptively simple, but often misunderstood: why even innocent questions, when asked the wrong way, can widen the gap between generations, and how you can express curiosity without losing your dignity. Let's get started. 1. Even if you're curious, don't ask questions directly. What is that? How does it work? They're simple, innocent questions, right? But sometimes, the moment those words leave your mouth, you feel the air shift. A pause. A look. A quick, dismissive, just Google it, or worse, no response at all. If you've ever asked a younger person a question only to be met with silence, sarcasm, or an impatient sigh, you're not alone. Many older adults I've worked with over the past decade have shared this same experience: the sting of being dismissed, not because they asked a foolish question, but because they dared to be curious in a world that's moving too fast. Curiosity used to be celebrated. It meant you were engaged, intelligent, and still interested in learning. But somewhere along the way, especially in the tech-driven culture we live in now, curiosity from older adults started being misunderstood as outdated, slow, or even annoying. And the worst part? You weren't even trying to impress anyone. You were just trying to connect. I've seen this happen in real life, more times than I can count. A retired teacher asks how to scan a QR code. A former business owner wants help with online banking. And in return, they get shrugged off, as if their question was a waste of time. These reactions, though small, cut deep. Because they don't just make you feel uninformed, they make you feel invisible. Over time, you stop asking. You stop engaging. and the distance between generations only grows wider. But here's the thing I want you to remember. Curiosity is not weakness. In fact, it's one of the greatest signs that your mind is alive and your spirit still wants to grow. The real challenge isn't whether you should ask questions, it's how you ask them. That's where the wisdom comes in. Instead of jumping in with a direct question like, "What does that mean?" or "How do I do that?" try shifting your tone. Use warmth, not pressure. Admiration, not confusion. For example, say, "It's incredible how comfortable you are with this technology. When you have a moment, I'd love to learn how it works." That one small change can transform the conversation. You're no longer asking for help, you're offering connection. And younger people, when they feel seen and appreciated, are far more likely to respond with kindness and patience. I remember one gentleman, a retired principal, who felt embarrassed after asking his grandson for help with an online form. The boy just said, "Tap here," and walked away. Later, the man told me, "I used to be the one who had answers. Now, I feel like I don't even deserve one." That broke my heart. But with time and a shift in approach, he began saying things like, "You're so good at this. Can you walk me through it when you have a moment?" And suddenly, the tone changed. They weren't just completing a task, they were bonding. So no, don't stop being curious. Don't silence your questions. But learn to wrap them in gentleness and understanding and grace. In today's fast world, delivery matters more than ever. And how you ask can either build a bridge or reinforce the wall. Have you ever been made to feel small for simply asking a question? If so, take a moment and comment below with just one word: ignored. That simple word might be exactly what someone else needs to see today to feel less alone. And if this message is resonating with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, because this is a space for you, for your voice, for your continued growth. Now that we've talked about the quiet pain of feeling dismissed when you're simply trying to understand, let's turn to something just as subtle, but often even more damaging. In the next section, we'll explore how words spoken from a place of pride or control, even when well-intended, can come across as arrogant, and how learning to speak from humility can preserve not just your relationships, but your inner peace. Let's continue. 2. Never use arrogant words. You know, back in my day, we did things the right way. Have you ever caught yourself saying something like that? Or maybe you've heard someone say it to you, with that familiar tone that sounds more like a judgment than a story. At first glance, statements like this seem harmless, even nostalgic. But within seconds, they can shift the tone of an entire conversation, especially with younger people. The truth is, arrogance rarely looks like arrogance to the person speaking. It often disguises itself as confidence, wisdom, or experience. But for the person on the receiving end, especially someone younger, it can feel dismissive, condescending, or even hurtful. And that's where the danger lies. Because sometimes, it's not the content of our words that builds walls, it's the way we deliver them. In over a decade of working closely with seniors, I've seen this happen time and again. A father gives advice to his adult daughter, only for her to go silent. A grandmother comments on how parenting was tougher in her time, and suddenly the room feels tense. It's never meant to harm, but it often does. So why does it happen? Often, it stems from a place we don't talk about enough: the fear of being forgotten. As we age, we long to stay relevant, to prove we still have something to offer. And sometimes, without meaning to, that longing shows up in our tone, in our need to be right, to teach, or to remind others of how much we've been through. But when that intention comes out wrapped in pride, it can create distance instead of connection. People stop listening, not because we don't have value, but because the message gets buried beneath the tone. Arrogance, at its root, is often a reaction to insecurity. It says, "I need you to see that I still matter," even if the words don't say that directly. And while that need is deeply human, the way it's expressed can backfire. I once spoke with a retired executive, brilliant, respected, and admired in his field, who couldn't understand why his grandchildren avoided conversations with him. "I just want them to listen," he said. But when I asked how he spoke to them, he admitted, "I mostly tell them what they're doing wrong and how we used to do it better." That right there, that tone, was the problem. His intentions were rooted in love. But his delivery? It sounded like criticism. Here's the truth. People don't remember what you know, they remember how you made them feel. So how can we share wisdom without sounding arrogant? The answer lies in humility. Humility doesn't mean silence. It means choosing words that invite, not instruct. It means replacing "you should" with "have you ever tried?" or "back then, we found this helpful. What's it like now?" That slight shift makes all the difference. It turns a one-way lecture into a two-way conversation. And that's how mutual respect is built. Another trap we fall into is subtle bragging, when we mention our accomplishments or past experiences not to connect, but to compare. "I worked 2 jobs and still raised 4 kids," said with the wrong tone, can sound less like pride and more like passive judgment. Again, it's not the fact, it's the frame. Instead of making others feel inspired, it can make them feel inadequate or defensive. And that's never the goal. If you want to be heard, the key isn't speaking louder, it's speaking kinder. Share your stories, yes, but wrap them in curiosity and empathy and a willingness to learn just as much as you teach. Say things like, "It's amazing how parenting has changed. I can't imagine doing it with the internet watching every move. How do you handle that?" Statements like that say, "I've lived, but I respect that you're living too." And in that space, real connection can happen. Think about it. When was the last time someone truly listened to you? Not because you had the loudest voice, but because you made them feel safe in your presence. That kind of trust is built, not demanded. And it starts with the words we choose. So next time you feel tempted to offer advice or share a back in my day story, pause and ask, is this coming from a place of love or a place of pride? Because the difference will be felt. And speaking of pride, it's worth saying, there's nothing wrong with being proud of who you are and what you've overcome. But pride that uplifts is very different from pride that pushes others down. Let your stories inspire, not intimidate. Let your tone welcome, not warn. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't to be right, it's to stay close. And relationships are far more valuable than winning any conversation. If this resonates with you, take a moment and comment the word "heard" below. If you've ever felt ignored or misunderstood just because you wanted to be listened to, that one word can let others know they're not alone. And if this message is speaking to your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps this space growing and helps bring these quiet, powerful lessons to more people who need them. Now that we've looked at how our words can unintentionally create distance, let's shift to something even more personal: how revealing too much about our past mistakes can sometimes backfire, not heal. In the next section, we'll talk about the power of selective honesty, when to share, and when silence is the wiser choice. Let's keep going. 3. Don't unnecessarily dredge up your flaws. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but that sentence has started more moments of regret than we care to admit. It sounds innocent. It sounds honest. But what follows is often something we can never take back. A story about a past mistake, a flaw we've carried for years, or a wound that still stings more than we'd like to admit. And once it's out there, it's not just our truth anymore. It becomes someone else's perception of us, colored by their emotions, their judgment, and sometimes their ability to use our vulnerability against us. Have you ever opened up to someone and later wished you hadn't? Maybe you shared something deeply personal, thinking it would bring you closer, only to watch it become a tool they use to hurt you later, whether in an argument, a moment of frustration, or silence that felt colder than any words. In my years working with older adults, I've seen this happen again and again. A man shares that he once made a financial mistake decades ago, and suddenly, his adult children question every decision he makes today. A woman opens up about a failed relationship from her youth, and years later, her spouse throws it back at her during an argument. These aren't just stories. They're examples of how oversharing can quietly chip away at your dignity, even when your intentions were pure. Of course, it's natural to want to be open with the people we love. We're told that honesty is the foundation of trust, and it is. But honesty doesn't mean full disclosure of every pain, every regret, every past failure. There's wisdom in knowing what to share and what to keep sacred, because not every listener is safe. Not every listener is ready. And sometimes, dredging up the darker parts of our past doesn't bring healing, it brings imbalance. You might think you're being vulnerable, but in the wrong context, what you're really doing is handing someone a loaded weapon. Even those who love you may not fully understand how to hold your story with care. And once your flaws are exposed, they can't be unshared. That's the hard part. Once they've been spoken aloud, you no longer control how they live in someone else's mind. Worse, these stories don't just affect how others see you, they can reshape how you see yourself. Repeating the same stories of regret, again and again, cements a narrative of brokenness. It can make you forget how far you've come, how much you've grown, and how resilient you've truly been. You start to wear your past like a label, when in truth, it's only a chapter. So ask yourself, is this story I'm about to share meant to bring us closer? Or is it just a reflex from a place of guilt, shame, or loneliness? Is it helpful, or is it heavy? The truth is, we often share from pain when we haven't fully made peace with our past. But healing doesn't always require speaking. Sometimes, healing lives in quiet self-forgiveness, in acknowledging your journey and letting your growth speak louder than your history. This doesn't mean hiding who you are. It doesn't mean pretending you're perfect. It means protecting your peace. It means realizing that your value today is not dependent on exposing yesterday's wounds. There is a difference between honesty and oversharing. One builds trust. The other can create doubt, discomfort, or even emotional leverage in relationships. Especially as we age, this distinction becomes even more important. Your life story is long and rich, filled with lessons, but not every lesson needs to be explained. Some can be lived through your kindness, your patience, your wisdom. Some stories are best told through the way you carry yourself. I remember a woman in her late 70s who told me she used to confess everything in relationships. If they really love me, she said, they need to know it all. But time and heartbreak taught her something else. Those who truly love you don't need your confessions, they need your presence, your kindness, your strength. So now, she focuses on showing who she is, not everything she was. And the peace it brought her? Life-changing. So here's a simple question to ask yourself before sharing something painful. Does this bring light, or does it bring weight? If it brings light, if it leads to connection, understanding, or healing, share it. If it only brings weight, doubt, or power imbalance, let it go. Let it live in the past, where it belongs. You've already lived through it. You don't need to relive it aloud. Instead of telling someone, I made a terrible mistake years ago, try saying, there was a time I had to learn the hard way, and I'm proud of who I became because of it. That's still honest. But it's also powerful. It frames your past through the lens of growth, not guilt. Now that we've explored the risks of overexposing your flaws, it's time we look at a different kind of emotional trap, anger. In the next section, we'll talk about how anger, especially the kind rooted in loneliness or feeling unappreciated, can damage your dignity and your relationships more than you realize. Let's move forward. 4. Don't let anger take over. They didn't even ask me if I wanted to come. Those were the words of a man in his 70s, his voice shaking not with sadness, but with restrained fury. He had just found out his family had a gathering, and he wasn't invited. Or so he thought. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched. They forgot about me, he said. After everything I've done. And in that moment, his anger wasn't just loud, it was lonely. Have you ever felt that way? That heat rising in your chest, not just from what happened, but from what it meant? That maybe your presence doesn't matter anymore? That you've been quietly left behind? For many older adults, anger is often mistaken as grumpiness. But the truth is, what looks like irritation on the surface is often a deeper cry for recognition, respect, and belonging. And here's the hard part. The world doesn't always understand that. Instead of asking what's wrong, people pull away. They say you're being too sensitive or too dramatic. But beneath that anger is something deeply human, the need to feel seen, valued, and heard. In my years working with seniors, I've witnessed this over and over again. A grandmother lashes out at her daughter over a holiday plan. A retired husband snaps at his wife for forgetting to pick up a prescription. These aren't really about schedules or shopping lists. They're about the ache of feeling invisible. The quiet erosion of identity that comes when people stop looking to you, or through you. But here's the danger. If we let that anger take over, it starts to do the very thing we fear. Let me tell you a story I'll never forget. A woman I worked with, sharp, independent, beloved by many, was once excluded from a neighborhood dinner. She was furious. They're all fake, she told me. I hope they miss me when I'm gone. Later, she found out there was an invitation. She had simply overlooked it. But by then, she had already confronted one of the hosts and said things that couldn't be taken back. I let my anger speak for me, she told me, tears in her eyes. And it ruined years of friendship. The truth is, anger is like fire. It can warm or it can burn. And when it goes unchecked, it almost always burns the people we care about most. So what do we do with it? We don't bury it. We don't pretend it doesn't exist. We learn to recognize its real source. We ask ourselves, am I really angry about this situation? Or about feeling left out, disrespected, or forgotten? Because when you name the real emotion, you take back control. Instead of saying, how dare they not invite me, you say, I feel hurt that I wasn't included. Instead of yelling, you never listened to me, you say, I miss when we used to talk more. And instead of lashing out and walking away, you pause, breathe, and choose to speak with honesty, not heat. Anger is not a weakness, but letting it control you is. One of the most powerful skills I've seen older adults develop is the strength of the pause. That ability to sit with the feeling, to hold it without letting it erupt. To say, let me take a walk before I respond, or can we talk about this later? It sounds simple, but in those few seconds of pause, relationships can be saved. And if you've ever felt ashamed of something you said in anger, let me tell you, you're not alone. If that's happened to you, please comment the word fire below. Just that one word. Because someone else scrolling might need to know they're not the only one who burned a bridge they wish they hadn't. And if this resonates with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Your presence here matters, and together, we're building a space where wisdom, not wounds, guide our choices. You still have time, plenty of time, to be known for your calm, not your temper. For your grace, not your grudge. You've carried enough weight in this life. Don't let anger be one more thing you hold on to. As we move into the next section, I want to explore another pattern that, like anger, can quietly shape how people experience you. It's not loud like shouting or heated arguments. It's quieter, but no less powerful. In Part 5, we'll explore how constantly focusing on your health can affect not just your relationships, but also your mindset, your energy, and your happiness. And most importantly, we'll look at how to bring light back into your daily conversations. Let's continue. 5. Don't complain too much about your illness. Every time I call her, she starts with her blood pressure. That quiet, almost guilty confession came from a middle-aged daughter who loved her elderly mother deeply, but dreaded answering the phone. And not because she didn't care. It was because she already knew how the call would begin and how it would end, with pain, medications, complaints, and a sense of emotional weight that left both of them feeling heavier than before. Have you ever noticed how often conversations, especially in later life, become centered around illness? Aches, diagnoses, new prescriptions, medical appointments. Of course, these are real, and yes, they matter. But when our illnesses dominate every interaction, we risk being remembered not for who we are, but for what we suffer from. I've seen this over and over. Older adults whose social circles shrink, not because people don't love them, but because every conversation becomes a loop of discomfort. Friends stop calling, visits become less frequent, and silence fills the spaces where laughter and connection used to live. The truth is, no one wants to feel helpless. And when loved ones are constantly met with stories of pain they can't fix, that helplessness slowly turns into emotional fatigue. But here's what's even more important. This habit doesn't just affect how others feel, it affects you. Neuroscience shows that what we focus on, we reinforce. The more you speak about your pain, the more your brain locks into it. Your nervous system stays alert, your stress levels rise, and your body begins to live in that discomfort even more intensely. Over time, you start to believe that your illness is your identity, and that belief can quietly rob you of joy, hope, and even healing. So what can we do? First, acknowledge the truth. You are more than your illness. You are a whole person, full of memories, stories, talents, humor, and grace. Your identity is not your diagnosis. The people who love you want to connect with your spirit, not just your symptoms. That doesn't mean pretending you're fine. It means choosing when and how you speak about your pain. Instead of beginning every conversation with, I barely slept last night because of my knees, try saying, it's been a tough week, but today I'm grateful to see your face. That small shift opens the door to warmth and connection. Instead of turning your pain into a spotlight, you gently place it in the background and bring your presence forward. And when you talk with family or friends, lead with curiosity or lightness. Ask about their lives. Share a story. Offer a compliment. It might feel small, but that tiny act of shifting focus can completely transform the energy of a moment. I once worked with a retired librarian who told me, I stopped talking about my pills and started talking about books again. Her friendships changed. Her phone rang more often. And most importantly, she felt more like herself. This isn't about denial. It's about balance. Share when it's appropriate, especially with those who genuinely ask. But remember that your legacy, how people feel after being with you, is shaped by your energy, not just your health. If you've ever felt like illness has taken over your conversations, I invite you to comment the word joy below. Because joy, even in the face of pain, is a powerful form of healing. And if this message resonates with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You belong to a community that values your story, not just your struggles. And now, as we turn the page to our next lesson, we'll move from physical pain to something even harder to name, emotional heaviness. Because beyond the complaints about illness lies another weight many carry silently: resentment, comparison, old judgments that quietly poison our peace. In the next section, we'll talk about what it means to truly let go, not just for others, but for yourself. Let's continue. 6. Let go of resentment, comparison, and emotional baggage. After choosing to speak less about your illness, something deeper begins to surface, the emotional weight we've carried for years, often heavier than any physical pain. Resentment, comparison, and regret don't show up on medical scans, but they can quietly wear down your spirit day after day. Have you ever caught yourself replaying an old hurt? A sibling who got more attention, a friend who never said thank you, a betrayal no one else remembers, but you never forgot. It's understandable. But here's the truth. Resentment ages us from the inside out. It tightens our hearts and narrows our vision. Often, the people we resent don't even realize we're still holding on, yet the burden remains ours alone. I remember an 82-year-old man who hadn't spoken to his brother in decades over a land dispute. When I asked if the land still mattered, he sighed and said, "Not really." But the anger never left. That anger had become part of his identity, even though it brought him no peace. You don't have to wait for an apology to let go. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means deciding you've carried this weight long enough. Not because they deserve your grace, but because you deserve your freedom. And what about comparison? She sees her grandkids more. He's in better health. These quiet thoughts eat away at our joy. But comparison doesn't create happiness. It kills it. It blinds us to our own blessings. You are not someone else's story. You are your own, and it is enough. And then there's emotional baggage, old regrets, painful memories, the should-haves and what-ifs. They echo louder with age, especially when life slows down. But your past doesn't deserve to define your future. You can acknowledge your mistakes without dragging them into every conversation. Letting go is not about denial, it's about release. It's saying, "This happened. It hurt, but I won't let it own me anymore." It's choosing peace over punishment, even if that peace is only for yourself. So how do we start? Gently. Speak to yourself the way you would to a dear friend. Be kind in your thoughts, not just your words. And the next time an old hurt surfaces, try saying this: "That belongs to the past. I choose to move forward." Because every day, you have a new chance to release what no longer serves you, and to breathe just a little lighter. As we move into the next part of this journey, we'll explore something just as powerful: the importance of keeping trust. Because while emotional wounds hurt, few things cut deeper than broken confidence. In the next section, we'll talk about why protecting other people's secrets is one of the purest forms of love, and how doing so strengthens the very foundation of our most meaningful relationships. Let's keep going. 7. Don't reveal other people's secrets. Promise you won't tell anyone. Those words carry more weight than they seem. Because what follows next, whether it's a confession, a fear, a past mistake, or a moment of vulnerability, is not just information. It's trust in its rawest form. And once you speak it to someone else, it can never be taken back. We've all heard secrets. And let's be honest, we've probably all shared one, too. Sometimes it's unintentional. I thought it was okay to mention. Other times, it's disguised as concern. I'm only telling you because I'm worried. But here's the truth most people learn too late. Revealing someone else's secret doesn't just damage them. It changes how people see you. Even if you didn't mean harm. Even if what you said was true. The moment you betray someone's privacy, even slightly, you send a quiet message: "You're not safe with me." Especially in later life, when relationships become fewer and more precious, protecting trust becomes more important than ever. One broken confidence can erase years of closeness. I once sat with a woman who said, "I told my friend something in private. A week later, 3 people knew." Her voice cracked. It wasn't the secret that hurt me. It was knowing I was never safe with her again. And here's what made it worse. The secret wasn't even repeated with malice. It was shared casually, as conversation. But to the woman who trusted her, that moment changed everything. You see, as we get older, people open up to us more. They seek our counsel. They confide in us. And whether it's a family member, a friend, or even a stranger who's grown close, what they give us in trust is not just their words, it's their dignity. And when we pass that on to someone else, even with good intentions, we risk damaging that dignity and our own. So what's the lesson here? Let their stories stay with you. Not on your tongue, not in whispers, but in your heart. You don't need to carry their burden, but you do need to protect their right to carry it their way. Silence, in this case, isn't weakness, it's strength. It says, "You are safe with me." And few things in this world are more valuable than that. If this message resonates with you, take a moment to comment the word "safe" below. Let's remind ourselves, and each other, of the sacred responsibility that comes with being trusted. And if you found this video meaningful, please like it and subscribe. Every click helps us grow a community built on empathy, wisdom, and the kind of quiet integrity that never goes out of style. Now that we've explored the importance of guarding other people's truths, we're going to look at something even closer to home: the words we say when we're hurting. Because sometimes, the things we blurt out in anger or pain leave wounds far deeper than we realize. In the next section, we'll talk about how to pause before we speak, especially when we're at our most vulnerable. Let's continue. 8. Avoid speaking when your words are meant to wound. Fine, then maybe I shouldn't have stayed all these years. That was the last thing she said before walking out of the room, and deep down, she didn't mean it. But the damage had already been done. Sometimes, the words we say in moments of pain, anger, or disappointment cut far deeper than we intend. Not because they're lies, but because they're designed to hurt. Have you ever caught yourself saying something not to express truth, but to make someone else feel it, to return the sting you just received? It's human, it's emotional, but it's also dangerous. Because when we speak from a place of raw emotion without pause, we often say things we regret, words that echo long after the moment has passed. As we age, you'd think this would get easier, but in many ways, it gets harder. We carry more experiences, more frustrations, more layered pain. And sometimes, when we feel dismissed, ignored, or emotionally overwhelmed, we lash out not with fists, but with phrases. But words, once spoken, can never be unspoken. They take on a life of their own. They shape how others remember us, and they shape how we see ourselves. That's why one of the most powerful forms of self-control isn't silence, it's timing. It's learning to recognize when your intention isn't to connect, but to cut. When your voice isn't looking for resolution, but retaliation. And in that moment, the wisest thing you can do isn't to speak louder, it's to pause. In my years working with older adults, I've learned this. The strongest people are not those who never feel anger, but those who don't let anger speak for them. One woman once told me, "I've never regretted holding my tongue, but I've regretted almost every time I didn't." That stayed with me, because there's truth in that silence. There's power in restraint. So the next time you feel the words bubbling up, the sharp comment, the sarcastic jab, the line you know will hurt, ask yourself one thing: will this heal, or will this harm? And if the answer leans toward harm, walk away. Breathe. Write it down. Say it to the mirror. But don't say it to the person you love, because once it leaves your mouth, it may leave a bruise on their heart that doesn't fade. If this message speaks to you, take a moment and type the word "pause" in the comments. It's a simple reminder that not every thought needs to be spoken. Some truths are best delivered with time, softness, and a clear heart. And if you found this video meaningful, please like it and subscribe. Your voice, your growth, your wisdom, it all matters here. Together, we're learning not just how to speak, but how to speak with care. Now, in our final reflection, we'll explore something even more intimate: the quiet sadness we often try to hide, pretending we're fine when, inside, we're breaking. In the last section, we'll talk about why it's okay to be honest about your pain, and how true strength is found in gentle vulnerability. Let's finish this journey together. 9. Don't pretend you're fine when you're breaking inside. I'm fine. It's one of the most repeated lies in the world. Two words we use like a shield, hiding everything we're truly feeling behind a wall of forced calm. Have you ever said those words with a smile, while holding back tears? Have you ever looked someone in the eye and insisted you were okay, when deep down, your heart felt like it was quietly falling apart? If so, you're not alone. In fact, some of the strongest people you know are silently carrying the heaviest pain, simply because they don't want to burden anyone, seem weak, or admit they're struggling. And the older we get, the more we're expected to be the rock, the steady one, the wise one. But strength isn't about silence, it's about honesty. It's about knowing that it's okay to not be okay. Too often, we bottle things up: loss, fear, loneliness, regret, and wear a mask that says, "I've got this." But inside, the pressure builds. And the truth is, No one can carry emotional pain forever without breaking somewhere. It might show up as anxiety, or fatigue, or even anger that seems to come from nowhere. Pretending everything's fine doesn't protect you, it isolates you. It cuts you off from the people who would gladly help if only they knew you needed it. And here's what's even more important. You don't need to share everything with everyone, but you do need to share something with someone. That could be a trusted friend, a family member, a counselor, a spiritual guide, someone who will listen without judgment. Because when we name what we're going through, it loses some of its power. The act of speaking out doesn't make us weak, it makes us real. And real connection only happens when we're honest enough to show what's beneath the surface. I once met a woman who always smiled at church, always volunteered, always checked on others. But one day she quietly admitted to me, "I cry almost every night when no one's around." She had spent years being the strong one, but in doing so, she never gave others the chance to support her. The day she finally opened up, something beautiful happened. People didn't pity her. They stood by her. Because vulnerability doesn't repel love, it invites it. So if you're watching this and you've been saying, "I'm fine," when you're not, take this moment to let go. You don't have to write a novel. You don't have to explain everything. Just drop one word in the comments. Not fine. That simple act might be your first step toward healing, and it might help someone else feel brave enough to speak up too. And if this message touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe. You're part of a community that believes in truth, in tenderness, and in the quiet power of showing up exactly as you are. Now, as we come to the end of this video, take a breath and remember, you've learned to hold your questions with grace, your pride with humility, your past with perspective, and your words with care. You've learned when to speak, and perhaps more importantly, when not to. So in our final moments together, let's reflect on the power of choosing kindness and peace in every word we say. Let's close this journey together. If you've made it this far, I want you to pause, take a breath, and know this. The fact that you're still here, watching, listening, reflecting, means something. It means you're not just existing, you're choosing to grow. And after everything we've uncovered together, from unspoken pain to words better left unsaid, one final truth rises above them all. Your words still have the power to shape your relationships, your peace, and your legacy. After years of holding it all in, pretending you were fine when you weren't, trying to stay strong for others while struggling inside, it's time to stop carrying that alone. But it's also time to shift how we speak, to others and to ourselves. Because every time we open our mouth, we make a choice. To heal or to harm, to listen or to interrupt, to soothe or to stir. And especially in this season of life, where every conversation matters more than ever, choosing kindness and peace in our words is one of the greatest gifts we can give. You don't need long speeches or fancy phrases. Sometimes, kindness sounds like, "Thank you," or "Tell me more," or even silence, when you know someone just needs to be heard. Peace shows up in tone, in timing, in the courage to pause instead of reacting. It shows up in asking, "Will this bring us closer or push us apart?" And it's in that pause where real connection lives. One of the most beautiful things about growing older is this: you no longer have to prove anything. You've lived, you've learned, and now you get to choose how you leave your mark. Not through grand gestures, but through gentle, thoughtful words that stay with people long after you've left the room. Because people may forget what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. And so, let them remember warmth. Let them remember grace. Let them remember that even when you were hurting, you spoke with love. If this video touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below, just one moment, one sentence, one reflection that resonated with you the most. Your voice might be the very thing someone else needs to feel seen and supported today. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. This community is for you, for those who believe that growing older doesn't mean growing silent. It means speaking wiser. So as we close this journey, let me leave you with this. You don't need to say much to make a difference. Just speak slowly, speak kindly, speak with peace, and let every word be a reflection of the strength, softness, and wisdom you've earned. Thank you for being here. Until next time, take care of yourself and speak gently.